Is it true? Is it true that all young black boys want to become footballers or musicians? They all want to be basketball players or rappers. I don't know. I really don't know. But we're going to break that down because actually I found some data that suggests otherwise, but I also have some anecdotal data that would probably also suggest otherwise. But remember, you can't use anecdotal data for argument's sake. Now, my voice is a little bit fucked, so excuse me, but I wanted to get this video done. I'm already outside, so I was like, let me just get it done. Different environment today. Usually I'm in the office or I'm in my living room, but I thought I'd switch it up. I'll come outside, I've got some notes. I've got my iPad. We're just gonna get straight into it, man. And, I've spent weeks digging into different studies, interviews. I looked at some stats. I obviously have a lot of athletes that I'm friends with. And, I kind of want to break this down in as much detail as possible. On top of that, for those of you that don't know, I spent 10 years at Crystal Palace Football Club. From ages 8 to 18, when I was 16, I left school. I went full time, so I had a contract. I was getting paid. I wasn't a professional athlete. They call us scholars. Then when it was time to get a professional contract, they did not extend my contract. They did not give me a deal. I had knee surgery, and I went to the States, and I played out there. So when it comes to sports and being a young black guy that wants to become an athlete, I was your typical person. And I used to rap too. I used to rap from about 11 years old to about 14 is when I kind of stopped rapping. I'll tell a story about that another day, but if you Google me, you might be able to find a video on YouTube somewhere of some of my music videos, probably. Anyway, I was of this belief that a lot of black boys, they do want to be on TV, They want to achieve the stardom of a rap career, or they want to be a footballer. And I'm going to try and keep this UK-centric. So majority of them want to be footballers too. There are a lot of black footballers in the Premier League. So it makes sense. Like, it's what you see, and usually what you see, you want to become. And 9 times out of 10, what we consume is that media. We are very in the media. We consume a lot of media. We probably don't see as many black people in other prominent positions, such as lawyers, bankers, CEOs, CFOs. Those positions are not as visible. I'm not saying that black people aren't in those positions, but they are not as visible to the common young black boy and girl. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's just what I think, that's just my opinion. And to be honest, we can't really set up our kids to believe in a dream that really only 1 or 2% of people ever even achieve across the board, not even just in the black community. My second love in life was music. Football was first, but music for me was like, I don't know. I grew up in a household where my mum played a lot of music, a lot of Jamaican music. My dad loved R&B. He'd play a lot of R&B when I'd go to his house, when I go see him, old school R&B. And, not gonna lie, a lot of R. Kelly. I know the R. Kelly people are gonna kill me for saying that. Hello. And, my dad used to bang out a lot of R. Kelly, so old school R&B, a lot of Jamaican music, a lot of reggae. So music was my thing. Making it in the music industry, I might argue it's probably harder than becoming a professional athlete, potentially. And it's a 1 in a million shot, It's very difficult for an artist to even break through. And there was research done by a website called Music 3.0, and it actually showed us that over 1.3 million new artists are tracked in a year, and only about 0.05 even reach a mid-tier level of success, and the rest remain pretty much undiscovered. So that really shows you that there's only a tiny elite of musicians who end up with like record deals or, chart-topping hits. And that's why a lot of artists, they end up, like people who want to be artists, they end up becoming writers. They end up behind the scenes because of how difficult it is, and there's so many variables that you need to fit. But there was a recent survey that was done, and they actually found that black British kids ranked becoming a singer or musician in their top 5 aspirations. This did suggest a slightly higher interest in music among black kids, even from a young age. But to be fair, it also had white kids in there who did say that becoming a musician or a performer was also in their top 5. The evidence doesn't really suggest that we only want to be rappers and musicians, to be fair. But if we take a step back and look at some US data, which I want to keep this UK-centric, but there's not enough data in the UK for this. It did find that the US have found that black children are more likely to aspire to careers in entertainment or professional sports compared to their white or Asian counterparts. And many young black boys envision themselves being in the NBA, the NFL, or being a rapper on TV. I guess that's just the way things are with the media that we tend to consume. There's a bit of a myth when it comes to the stereotype. that black boys only want to be athletes or rappers. The research calls this a myth of low aspiration, but in fact, a UK study of year 10 students found that 65% of black youth aspired to have white-collar professional careers, virtually the same as the white British boys. Many black boys do aim to become doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, not just sportsmen. But these ambitions often get less attention than sports and music. When it comes to the music, I remember distinctly almost every friend that I've had did grime. Everyone rapped lyrics on grime beats, yeah? Like everyone I know, literally everyone, even the most nerdiest guy probably had a grime lyric, yeah? That might just be an inner city thing. And then on top of that, when there was that kind of uprising of the UK rap scene, we went from grime to rap. And everyone I know, literally almost everyone I know, even like people that didn't care about music, they had a rap lyric, okay? So it went from grime to rap in my age. Obviously, I'm still a young gun. That doesn't mean that everyone that I knew wanted to be rappers, but the music was very influential. Then I think culturally, we love music. Black people make the best music. We have the best music. We dominate music. Naturally, I think people gravitate towards that. Then there's also the financial side of it. Again, I've said it a million times, and every video is not going to be about, oh, black people are poor, but generally we come from poorer backgrounds, less well-off backgrounds. And we see music as a way out, a financial way out. If you know that if you become a rapper, which actually, to be honest, I don't really know how much money UK rappers make, but I don't think they make that much. But you become a rapper, you can make loads of money, then hey, why not do it if I have the skill and the ability to do it? But then the truth is there's only a few that make it. I remember when I was young and Chipmunk was blowing up, yeah, and that was the guy. When I was young, he was the guy for like young musicians. Obviously you had like your Kanos, your Wileys, your Skeptors, your Ghetto, all them guys, which were big. But when I was in school, Chipmunk was the guy that was like really blowing up as a youngster. He was the first one to come through as a young kid and be blowing up. And I think that a lot of people took inspiration from that at that time. Then you had the people that came after. And I think even now is like the best it's ever been. Yeah, well, actually, I'll take that back. Music right now is trash, especially UK music. But anyway, in terms of being able to make a career out of it, I think now is actually a good time. The music side of things is one thing. And another thing as well, to add to that, is like the music is so tied to the street culture, which, you know, black people are just synonymous with street culture. And we're also, again, inner city London, we are in the areas where the drug dealing and the street stuff and, you know, that stuff is happening. So we're so tied to it, it's a part of us. Like, yeah, maybe a lot of black boys do aspire to do that. Maybe they do, although the research says otherwise. Maybe they do. But then that leads me to the next part, which is athletes. And when it comes to the music or even athletes, there are some structures that kind of cause this to take place because, you know, the media shapes your dreams, right? And we often see ourselves as athletes, rappers, or unfortunately involved in crime. Those are the narratives that you see. Even as a kid, those are the narratives I see on the telly. And, you know, UK films, TV, they tend to overrepresent black boys in gang-related roles. And there is a doctor, his name's Dr. Clive Nwonka from the London School of Economics, I believe. And he did a whole study on this. He went through films, media representation, and those are the three positions you tend to see black men in, especially in TV, generally crime-related roles. You don't really see black men in fucking rom-coms. We have black rom-coms, the old American ones like Love Jones and stuff like that, but you don't see black men in a Bridget Jones being the love interest. Like, you don't see that. That's not visible. Is it possible that we can get black men to play more roles? That's why I think people love Supercell so much, because we finally saw black people doing something a little bit different than just being robbers, kids with knives. Although Supercell still had those elements to it, you know, the people had superpowers, and we ain't seen that yet. That's why it got such a positive response. But then here's why I say the data doesn't support the argument that black boys only want to be rappers, trappers, or footballers. Because we know that 53% of black African students, they expect to go to university. And that's in comparison to only 28% of white British students. So black boys tend to dream big, and they want to go down the educational route, right? But there is a drop-off because only 31% of young black men, 16 to 24, were actually employed in 2021. And that's compared to 56% of their white British peers. So we do see maybe some disparity or some kind of drop-off or some kind of change that takes place. There is a gap between, I guess, the ambition and the outcome. It could be systemic or systematic. There are a lot of reasons as to why. There's never a blanket answer, but we do see that black boys tend to want to achieve more. It doesn't really support the argument that, yo, black boys only want to be rappers or gangsters or musicians or whatever. I don't think that's true. Then we've got the social media effect, which has probably been more prominent over the last 5 to 10 years, especially with the way social media is going. When you go on social media, it's heavily, heavily focused on success and being flashy. My car, my watch, my house, having abs. You know, it's social media. People only show the highlights. The reality is that as a black person, my feed is filled with a lot of nonsense. We've got things like Shade Bar, which is just nonsense. We've got a lot of nonsense. We're just consuming a lot of nonsense. So it kind of clouds what I guess you see or how your perception of things. And that's very important. They say nearly 50% of young tradespeople worldwide say social media influenced their career choice. So if we think about that, what about the kids who are online all day? They see athletes, rappers, YouTubers. They don't really see engineers. They don't see architects. They don't see scientists. Those people don't get clout on social media. And if we know that 50% of people say that what they see on social media influences their career choice, but all they see is a certain thing, then what do you think is going to happen? I've spoken about the media representation, but there is something that is very dear to my heart, and that is obviously football, right? The Premier League dream. And I want to just throw some numbers at you because, you know, that was my dream, right? It's still my dream today. If I could turn back time and do it all over again, I would do it all over again. There are 1.5 million youth players in the UK, and only 180 of them become a professional footballer. That doesn't mean they get to the highest level. They just become a professional footballer. That is a 0.012% chance of actually making it. And the funny thing about this is when I was playing for Crystal Palace, they would come into the training ground and they would bring lecturers in and they would tell us, look, out of all of you guys in the squad, only one of you are even going to get a pro contract. And that doesn't mean you're even going to play for the first team. That doesn't mean you're going to play in the Premier League. And they would be very, very honest and they would tell us that, listen, you're playing a game here that not many of you are even have a chance of making it. So I do think that, you know, they do warn you of the signs, but when you're a young boy trying to make it, you don't care about the signs. You are so relentlessly aggressive about pursuing your passion, your dream, that you don't really believe that you're going to be the guy that don't make it. I never thought I'm not going to make it. Why would I think that? I came here to make it. So there's that, you know. Less than 1% of academy players even make it to the Premier League. And that's overall. That's not just black boys, that's overall. So you think about that, and there's no data, there's not enough data on this, but if we just look at black boys alone, then their chances become even less, which is kind of scary. But then when we look at footballers in the UK, you know, 43% of Premier League footballers are black. That doesn't mean black British, that just means black. So it could be players from Africa, players that are from other European countries that are black, which lets us know that, you know, there's a lot of us in there. But then if we look at off the pitch, only 4.4% of managers are black. Only 1.6% are in executive or ownership roles. The issue is that basically those positions, those ownership positions are not really, they're not well seen. So young black boys are not even aware of those other positions, like behind the scenes positions, and that you can aspire to achieve those positions and live a good life as well. They see the footballers because the footballers are the ones that make money. They're the ones that, whoa, the footballers are the ones that make money. Oh, I'm about to lose all my bits here. They're the ones that make money. They're the ones that are, you know, they're the ones that are well known. They're the ones that are seen. And if they're the ones that are seen, and you don't get a chance to, we don't get a chance to see that, yo, I can be a success in all these other areas. So it's going to be difficult. Most boys don't see themselves in those other positions. They only see themselves being the star of the show, which is fine. I want to be the star of the show, but not everyone can be the star of the show. When we say black boys only want to be footballers, rappers, drug dealers, the data, oh my days. I don't know if we're going to get through this video today, guys, because this wind is getting a bit nuts. The visibility is just not there. Oh, I'm crying right now because of the wind. The visibility is not there for the young boys, especially when it comes to positions of power, executive roles, behind the scene roles. There's no visibility for those roles, and you are more likely to achieve and aspire to become something that you have seen, which leads me to the next part here, which is quite simple. In England, approximately 35% of secondary school teachers are male. The percentage has been declining year after year, with the proportion of secondary schools falling to a record low in recent years. Male teachers are likely to be found in secondary schools compared to primary schools, but the overall number of male teachers are low. Now, that is male teachers, not black male teachers, which this is something I have noticed and I've kind of thought about more recently. Is there's pretty much no black male teachers. Like, obviously they exist, but there's not a lot of them. And there's something called the BMT movement, which I found recently. It went viral in 2020. It's called Black Men Teach. And they were basically raising awareness of how rare it is to see black men in teacher positions. And they did some research, and the numbers I'm going to quote you come directly from them, which is quite good. Only 3.5% of teachers are black men, right? 85.8% of male teachers are generally white British. 96.5% of head teachers are white British, which actually, there's nothing wrong with that, to be honest. Only 1% of head teachers are black. And then they say that black teacher trainees are 21% less likely to be accepted. Now, this is research from the BMT website. I don't quite know how they found this research. I don't know how they conducted it. I don't know where they got their numbers from. So I can't sit here and say that, this is 100% accurate. But this kind of fits in line with what I'm aware of. And what I'm aware of is that there's not a lot of black male teachers. I went through school with one black male teacher that specifically taught classes to me, one. And when I posted a video the other day, a lot of comments were saying the same thing, that they never really had any black male teachers. And I'm gonna explain why this point matters in a second. But, the result of this, a black boy can go all the way through school, age 5 to 18, and never have a teacher who looks like them, right? But they will see hundreds of successful entertainers and athletes online. So where would you place your bets? That's what you have to ask yourself. The reason that that's important is basically this. If you're a black boy, you never get taught by a black man, right? You literally never get taught by a black man in school, which means that for you, your idea of success doesn't look like you. Like, there is no vision of you in the environment that you are raised and you spend the majority of your life in your early years. Like, you spend the majority of your early years in school, but you never see anyone that looks like you. I'm not saying that school needs to be flooded with black men, but there should be more of them. But there's a reason why black men choose to not be in those positions. And I always say representation matters, right? I need to see people that are like me to want to achieve certain things. And because they're not there, or they're never there, basically what happens is I'm being taught by a majority women, mainly white women, mainly white men, which is cool. But obviously sometimes there's a cultural disconnect. They don't know how to teach us. They don't know how to manage us. And like I said in my previous video, sometimes going to school was not to be taught, but to be managed. And that disconnect means that I'm probably not getting the best out of my education or my time in education. You need sometimes, and in some positions and in some places, you need people that look like you. But being a black male teacher in the UK is probably not the most enticing thing, which leads me to the next thing. There is not enough incentive for people to get into teaching. And I'm not talking about black men, I'm talking about everybody. Teachers are not paid as much as they should be, right? They're not paid as much as they desire and what they want. So therefore, if I'm a young black boy, why would I want to become a teacher? I'm not compensated well enough for the amount of effort that you got to put in. Another thing is, I know teachers, and some of these teachers in these inner city London schools, let's just say they find it difficult. The kids are hard to manage. So I've been told. So I can only imagine how difficult it is. Maybe organizations like BMT, they can do more to maybe train and educate and recruit black male educators, because I'm sure there are a lot of black men that would love to get into teaching, but we got to incentivize. And honestly, it's the wages, man. People want money. Like, the way the world is, people want money. Another thing is, we need to do more to celebrate black. I don't like the term black excellence, but we need to celebrate more people outside of entertainers and rappers and musicians and footballers. Like, there are black people in positions that are doing very, very well. They need to be celebrated even more. So that's the lawyers, the architects, the engineers, the scientists, right? We've got to try and get those people plastered on social media. It's not everyday shade barrow. Like, we've got people that are doing good things out here in different positions. Maybe we need to bring in some more diverse black professionals to run workshops, do mentorships. I know there are people that are doing that on lower levels. Maybe there's maybe there's space to create organizations that do it nationwide, but we need to have something that is, you know, pushing people to loads of different places, creativity, tech roots, you know, teaching people how to get into tech, not just doctors and lawyers, which, you know, those are respectable careers, nurses and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of positions, especially in the tech world, where black people are, again, underrepresented. There's maybe scope for that. Maybe there are organizations, but I was struggling to find a lot of them. There are a lot of like smaller organizations where they do mentorship, but I think that we should have something that's nationwide and bigger and broader. Another thing is, and this is more of an individual level, but parents probably need to do more to like strategize kids' social media feeds, right? And give them maybe more content, more real content. And I know that's gonna be a lot, that's hard, you can't police that, but if we're giving kids phones, we are giving kids phones, right? So if they're getting phones, we've kind of got to look at what they're looking at, which is, again, a bit more difficult. If we can get them to see things like, you know, CEOs, coders, marketers, pilots, like I'm trying to think of, like, there's black people in these positions, they're just not prominent. How can we make them more prominent? How can it be less shade bearer, more prominent positive voices, less silly podcasts chatting about stupidness and more value? Because another thing is, I remember I was chatting to someone, and I can't say who it is, but they're a big creator, and they were like, look, like, when they make a positive video, it doesn't get views. So why am I gonna make positive videos? I might as well make more of the effery, so to speak. And then also with that, we need to find ways to fund those alternative pathways. That could be like boot camps for different things, apprenticeships, creative arts, trades, like entrepreneurship. We've got to normalize multiple routes to success, and we've got to fund it. It's going to be on the parental level, like as parents, we've got to fund different activities for the kids, but maybe on a government level, we've got to look at how we can fund some of these activities for kids to have a more diverse portfolio and, you know, give them a more diverse interest so that they got a range of activities they can choose from in terms of where their ability and their skills align. And then the last thing, actually, we should be tracking more data, because this is a very difficult topic for me to talk about because there wasn't enough data to really pull from. And we should be trying to do a bit more ethnicity-specific reporting when it comes to teaching, employment, and career tracking, because ultimately, if we can't measure it, we can't fix it. And that's kind of difficult. You know, what gets measured gets optimized, and it's about doing that. So look, man, when I make this video, it's not about killing dreams. It's more about creating more dreams, actually, because I'm the archetype. I'm the literal archetype. Young black boy, wanted to be a footballer, you know, and I got very close to achieving my dreams. A lot of my friends got to achieve those dreams. I also did music. I got videos on YouTube, rap videos, spitting good lyrics, by the way. If I can find them, I'll post them. Black boys shouldn't have to try and be the 1% to make it, man. It's not really gonna work. It's almost impossible. So if you resonate with that in any way or any shape or form, feel free to leave a comment. Tell me your story about, you know, your experience. And this is the one time I'm gonna say you can leave some anecdotal data. Tell me stories, because there isn't much data on this. Is it true that black boys just want to be rappers, actors, footballers? I don't know. Peace.